Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Tuesday, February 18th. We are officially in the second portion or second half of the month, with the holiday being yesterday. You kind of missed one day. Don't forget, February only has 28 days as well. So this last end of the February will come upon us quickly. Let me get to the risk disclaimer first. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving any advice or recommendations. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only. So today, we had a little bit of a end of day rally, which brought the Qs back into the green, up 20 basis points. SPY, I think, also did the same thing. Same thing, about up about 0.3 of a percentage point. Overall, these things really didn't go anywhere from the open. Remember, we kind of started positive for the day, which in this particular market that we've got going on, that's kind of been inviting some sellers or some profit takers, and then we kind of battle back a little bit for the day, depending on what kind of day it is. But today I thought was really interesting because if you looked, and there was a portion of the day where the Qs went negative for the day, but you started to kind of look at the market breadth for the day, and what was going on under the hood, and it was stronger because if you look at, for example, the equally weighted S&P, that was up 0.8 of a percentage point. And also the equally weighted Qs were up about the same thing. So what was going on for the day? Why such a weird take in terms of in terms of the performance, where the equally weighted indices really shined. And if you bring this up for just a second here, so that you could just see what the Qs did in terms of what I want the movers for the day. You're going to see how many names went up for the day. Now, there's only like 100 names here in the Qs, but you're going to see that there was about 70 names, almost 70 names, that I think it's actually more than 70 names, were positive for the day. And meanwhile, there's a smaller amount, less than 30. Is that right? Sorry, 32 names that were down on the day. But take a look at what names were down for the day. Your Meta, which again, I'm not trying to say anything negative about Meta, because I think Meta was up 20 days in a row. Netflix also did the same. So there was some profit taking in these areas of the market. And then the rest of that Mag 7 group, or Great 8 that I call them, also were down. So remember, when these things don't do well, when an Apple doesn't do well, when an Amazon, Google, Google was down about 1% for the day. Amazon was down about 1% for the day. And then, of course, Meta down. Microsoft bucked the trend, as well as NVIDIA, which was up for the day too. Sorry, looking at the wrong column here, but there you go. That was the percentage change for the day. So you kind of have a little like this lopsided move, but overall, like, I kept looking, I'm like, there's a lot of positive things. I'm like, just because these big cap names, which I haven't, to be honest, really haven't been trading them that much, because the earnings weren't particularly good for the majority. I don't want to say that they weren't good, but the earnings reactions weren't particularly good in a Microsoft, a Google, an Amazon. And obviously Netflix and Meta were good. Tesla was kind of mixed in there. NVIDIA is yet to report earnings, but so I don't think that group anymore is pulling the same. Well, it's still pulling the indices, but in terms of growth, it's, these are not high growth names anymore. There will still be trading opportunities in those names, especially when they sell off, and especially when the market wants to be in something a little bit more conservative. But as far as momentum goes, they've kind of they're not showing that leadership anymore. A couple other things that I thought were interesting. And by the way, as I go through some things here, I'm just going to talk a little bit about that we are just something to be cognizant of is in this. And I went through this with members over the weekend about, and a little bit trying to have a little bit of a game plan for this. But the second half of February, it's seasonally weak. Now, there's no guarantees, right? Whenever I talk about seasonality, it's never one thing like, oh my God, I'm going to sell all my stocks. Like, I'm not going to do that because we're in a weaker seasonal period. And just because we're in when we get into a stronger seasonal period, I'm also not just going to go out and straight buy, right? It's going to be more about the price action, but I'm going to follow a pretty disciplined approach if I think that we're starting to break down. One thing that is not particularly good looking here is Bitcoin. Now, it is trading below the value area for the month, which I view as weak because it's now below the range of last month. So it's breaking below that range. Is it really breaking down here? I don't know yet. It's too early. Would I go long here? I wouldn't go long until it breaks back into the value area for the month and is back above that 50-day moving average. I like when the moving averages line up with the value areas, which use volume at price. But so this is out of favor for right now. And then it's funny because gold, which these kind of things did the opposite today, what they did on Friday, but look at gold come back. That's very impressive after that candle on Friday, probably a shake 'em out type candle, and going right back out to new highs. So that's a couple things that I thought were of interest in terms of how we set this weekend up, this week up with our watch list. Right. Just gonna hide this here. So oh, there we go. That's fine. But look at all the signals that were going off today. And I traded a couple of these things. I didn't get to trade them all. CRS was one name. This is a name that that I highlighted in my weekend note. So you can find that here. If you're not subscribing to this, it's only $20 a month. It's it. And if you even want the free version, you could get still a lot of good information out of it. But this is CRS. I give the whole watch list, right? And of course, I put all the charts for full-time members in Slack for every one of these names, and I talk about the setup. But I also highlight a couple of my favorite names, and I really like the CRS, which is again something different than all the software names and high growth names that were very strong last week. But really nice move in this thing. This thing was up 9% today. So that and a name that I highlighted last week, which was Grab. I mentioned that I was adding along, and this name did well today too. Now, I think I want to just pause here for a minute and just talk about this group. Now, I don't know, this name is going to report earnings. It's also a $5 stock. It's also an international stock. So there's a pretty decent level of or amount of speculation or risk in this. But it's a $5 stock. Like, of course it could go down to zero or whatever, but you can kind of think of it as a call option for something like this. So look at the volume today, nice volume. Again, I don't know what they're going to report on earnings, but I wanted to just bring your attention to something. Take a look at what the Singapore ETF has been doing. Right? I know this is not on everybody's radar, right? And I've been talking a lot more about international areas of the market. I talked a lot about emerging markets last week. We've talked about China names. I've been long KWeb for the last couple weeks. I also got long EEM. But look at this. Look at the Singapore ETF breaking out. I don't see very many people talking about that. Right now, of course, there's one name that everybody knows in Singapore, and that's SE, which has been making a really nice comeback. It was on our watch list last week, but look at it continue to go here. I mean, so this is nice. So I'm trying to again, there's no assurances, but I kind of like this Grab, which is a Singapore-based company, and I like the risk I like the risk setup going into this, that it's a $5 stock and maybe it could really move. So where could it move to? So I just want to say one more time, I don't know what they're going to do on earnings, but this was a stock that was much higher in the past, right? And you can kind of see this when I zoom out here. The stock was all the way up here. So there's some VPOCs up here that this could possibly rage into if it reports something really decent, $7.75 and $10. So again, no idea what they're going to do on earnings. How many times have I said that? But ultimately, and I did take a target in this one, and I actually added back the target. I took a target pre-market, and nice move here. So this to me is going to be an interesting name, and also, why do I bring this name up? Right. Well, I talked about the equally weighted Qs that were doing better. Here's what the equally weighted Qs look like. Right. So we know that I don't know why this is all screwed up here, but we know that there is a zoom button here somewhere. But in any event, we know that what's going on under the hood, and especially in growth names, are very strong right now. And because this is stronger than the Qs, and as I just talked about today's price action, but you've got a full-on breakout here. Right, here's RSP, which is lagging a little bit because it got hit so hard at the end of the year. But this, like I said, this had a nice day today too. But take a look at some of the other ETFs that are moved. Like here's this is next gen Qs, right? I'm sure you're aware of this ETF. The ARK Innovation ETF has been doing really well as well. And the IBD 50, which looks at growth names, and this has also been doing really well. So the only reason why I'm pointing this out, and just as I would point out other groups if they were doing really well, because if you're a regular viewer of my videos or a member of my trading room, you know that I'm very objective. I go where there's strength, right? I go with what is moving up. I do. I avoid things that are going down, right? I know that sounds very simplistic, but I was just listening to a podcast last night, and this was Christian Flanders, who won second place, and he was breaking it down the same way. He went, second place in the U.S. Investment Championship last year. I think his return was something over like 400%. But I like to watch these videos. Richard Moglen does a great job at talking about traders who have done very successfully, been transparent. They're in either the USIC or they're posting their results someplace else, and just going after names that have momentum. Again, while we're in a bull market, are we in a bull market? Yes, we're in a bull market, right? So you want to be going after some of these things, and just as in the beginning of the year, we were trading more. I was trading more things like energy was making a nice reversion, from the lows. Industrials were doing that as well. Clearly, financials have done very well, but right now, what's very strong is a lot of different growth names, and that's also coming from earnings results as well. We've seen a lot of good earnings results from growth companies. So I wanted to bring up something else too as another trade. Speaking of ARK, right? I actually there was some call buying in ARK. This is the genomic revolution, and again, you have to kind of look at the weekly chart here. Now, there's a VPOC that's being taken out, which could be an area where there is profit taking. But I think if you look back, now again, you don't want to really look at the 2021 highs because there was full on huge speculation here. But take a look at the base that this has been forming, right? A lot of these things have been forming bases and they had some starts and stops. I talked about that this weekend with the China Internet ETF, right? It took a few years, right, between a lot of stops and starts after this thing finally bottomed. And again, by the way, this is also something I went in the week talked about in the weekend video. This is how a lot of things that have had big declines work themselves through after a big decline. So like stage 4 analysis, then you have stage 1, and then you have stage 2 where it's beginning to resolve back higher. But it takes time. I know retail traders are out there sometimes buying the dip in things immediately when they go down, but sometimes it takes a long time. In this sense, 2022, 2023, 2024, it finally at the end of the year started to kind of come out of this. So you can kind of look for some of these things and say, hey, maybe they're due. And this is something that I think is fairly interesting. Now, it's got a whole 2750. But I did start a position in this. I added a little bit at the end of the day because I knew when they saw that call buyer that came in that it was a little. In any event, this is something that I think is interesting and that could see, possibly, a move from the lows. Let's talk about the power companies for a minute. CEG had good results today. I didn't hear too many people. I don't know, maybe I just wasn't on X too much today, but CEG made a nice move here. Now, it did not break higher, but it's leaning higher. And I did start a position in GEV. I took off my position. Again, it's just kind of sitting here on the 50-day moving average. So I think this one you got to be a little bit patient with, right? NRG, I took this position off today. I might have taken it off early. I thought the restaurant names were kind of interesting today too. I've been sitting in this this Brinker for the last couple days. It still has to get above the 20-day moving average. It's struggled with this a little bit, so it's not done. It's not quite there yet. But look at DRI today, and I kind of wish I was in this one, even though this one did not reported earnings back in here. But look at Darden. I mean, that's a big move. That's 4.8%, and that's getting back above these moving averages. So I did not have that on the watch list, but I mentioned AXON had a nice day today. HWM had a nice day today. right? This is another one that I traded back in here. I have not gotten back involved in this one, but there's definitely nice opportunities. APLD, which we saw option activity in last week. This one made a nice move. If you're looking for continuation in this one, watch 988, which is the top of the value area for the month. We already talked about CRS, and then of course Upstart, which had a nice day in this one too. Notice it's staying above the 5-period moving average. A little bit dicey in here, whippy price action after earnings, but it held where it needed to, and that's why I put it on the watch list for this week. So I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but make sure that if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group and you want at least an intro to it, I would sign up for our Substack. It's TTG trading.substack.com. So www, I think ttgtrading.substack.com. Again, you could get at least sign up for the free version, but it's $20 a month. I know some people are being really frugal with what they're doing. I've always said that you need to be a part of, you should be a part of a community, and you have to invest a little bit of money. I'm not saying it's my service or that you have to do it, but if you're either full-time trading, or if you're spending a lot of time trading, you need to have like some type of community around you to either bounce ideas off, see what they're doing, because you're not going to get that on X, right? You're going to get a lot of after the fact stuff, and that's what I do too. Like I'll post a lot of my ideas after I've already shared them with my trading community at Tribeca Trade Group. So in any event, like do yourself just like anything, right? If you're investing, like if you watch TV and you watch, if you're subscribing to Netflix or you're subscribing to another one of these, right? It's important to invest a little bit of money in what you're doing. And again, it doesn't have to be in my service. And you want to try a couple different ones, because there's a couple that are not very good out there and they give everybody a bad name, right? And I get that, right? There's a whole slew of that, which I'm not going to get into, but you should try a couple where you can find some good traders to trade with. All right, that said, have a great night. See you tomorrow.